So this month it's Mental Health Awareness Month. So I thought I'd do a short video to talk about my mental health and my PTSD. It's not something that I normally share with people apart from close family and friends who know my story. But nonetheless, I will share it and open myself to everyone that watches it. So I decided to talk about my mental health issues and PTSD this evening because it coincides this month with Veterans in Action, which is a charity set up by veterans with one aim, which is to help former servicemen and women who suffer from the effects of war, who struggle to adjust with civilian life as a result of the horrors and the challenges that they've witnessed during their time served. Veterans in Action, Walk a Mile in My Shoes, is similar to the Ice Bucket Challenge that was going on last year, I think it was. And it's basically, don't judge me until you've walked a mile in my shoes. So I'm going to chat a little bit about the journey, or my story, so to speak, about my mental health, how I got there, how I deal with it, and how I live with it, and how my life is today. And then I will pledge the text donation to Veterans in Action, and I'm hoping to do a 30-mile walk with my old 2 troop, the lads that I was in the army with. So let's start. I wasn't too sure where to actually start the story from. I know there's obviously a beginning, but I wasn't sure where the beginning of my story was. Was it when I first went to Iraq? Was it the accident? Was it finding out about the PTSD, the court case in America, and, you know, going from there? But then I realised that the start of my story is really a time when I guarantee everyone will know, who's watching this, will actually know where they were at that time. And that's, of course, I'm speaking about September the 11th, 2001. We all know that the planes hit the Twin Towers and what went on from there, and the Iraq War. And it was because of that, of what happened in New York City, of why I ended up in Iraq. And it was a simple phone call from a friend of mine that I'd served with, and he told me that he'd got a job working in Iraq for an extortionate amount of money. And, you know, I just thought, I'll take a bit of time out of my life to go and earn a decent bit of money so that I can set myself up and have the life that I wanted. You know, things did happen, and not once do I regret going to Iraq or working in Iraq or doing whatever I did in Iraq. So anyway, I started working in Iraq in 2004. I'd worked for several companies on several contracts, had a few skirmishes here and there, nothing really to write home about. And then I managed to jump on a contract with a company called Aegis. And the way they worked at that time, you had to be in country, as in Iraq, to apply for the job. So they knew that you were already working for a company and capable, so to speak. So I did the interview, obviously got the job, and I started with that company on the 1st of December 2007. So from that, when I turned up in Baghdad, the company policy was to run through certain things like driving, first aid, shooting, you know, just the basics of what you should know to be on one of the teams. And after a week, if you were good enough, you then joined the team, and that was you. You was basically on that contract. So I'd done my week's training, was put on a team, and I think I was, I think it was the 20th of December 2007, so I'd only been with that company 20 days when we headed out to go up to a place called Tikrit, which is north of Baghdad. And as we got to the Samara bypass, my job was rear vehicle driver. I saw a suspect vehicle coming in from the left, and things went on from there. My vehicle rolled 6 times, and I was injured, and a very good friend of mine was injured also. So I'm not really going to go too much into the accident, as it's not really that interesting. And to be honest, I don't really want to talk about that part. But the accident happened. Me and my friend Mick were injured. Mick severely injured, in all fairness. He had a broken arm, broken leg. I think he had 3 broken ribs, and the worst bit, he had a punctured lung. To look at me, I just had a head wound, and my eyes were swelling up. So we were choppered in by the Black Hawk helicopters to the field hospital in Tikrit, and you know, they did their best. They patched us up. They did the scans, and you know, it was revealed that I'd broken my T3 vertebrae and that I had a brain hemorrhage. Mick, as I say, was in a bad way. Mick's one of the hardest guys I've ever met. True professional, an amazing former soldier, I believe Special Forces. And as I say, he was in a really bad way. I was in that hospital for a week, but I think after the 3rd or 4th day, I asked how Mick was getting on, because he was on a separate ward to me, and they told me he wasn't doing very well, and that they wanted to bring Mick in so that he was in the next bed to me, so that we could, because we were opposed, we could spurn each other on, and a bit of comradeship and help each other. When they brought Mick in, I'll never forget that day when they brought him in, and he was in a bad way, and they'd given him this machine that he had to, like, it was like a tube with balls in it, and he had to blow into the tube to keep the balls floating, to try and reinflate his lung, but it just wasn't happening. So whilst he was laying next to me, they told him they had to insert a titanium rod, through the meat of, like, his 3rd rib, to pierce through and try and reinflate his lung. Obviously, the pain that Mick was experiencing at that time, and I'm laying in the bed next to him feeling guilty for putting him in that, and that guilt has never gone away. So they basically inserted the rod to reinflate his lungs, and as he was screaming in pain, I cried like a baby in the bed next to him, because I just felt like it was all my fault. So fortunately they were able to reinflate his lung, and I left the Tikrit Field Hospital about 3 or 4 days later. They flew me to Baghdad, and then subsequently they flew me home. And I actually didn't see Mick after that. I spoke to him on the phone and over Facebook, but I've never actually seen him since that day. I will talk about my PTSD problem shortly, but I arrived home and my back was in a bad way because I'd broken the T3 vertebrae. They'd managed to stop the bleed on the brain, but I was suffering certain effects from that. A lot of dizziness and confusion. I couldn't figure simple things out. I just couldn't remember them, and it was getting very frustrating. I managed to go private, like the insurance company had told me to, and I'd gone to the Beaumont Hospital, and I'd seen one of the best neurologists in the country, and how he explained the brain injury that I had. He had a bottle of water with a bit of sand in it, and he shook it up vigorously and said that the grain of sand's there, like your brain cells, and it can take years to settle. So further tests, it was apparent that I had what they called an acquired brain injury, and that where my brain had smashed to the front of my skull, it had caused cognitive problems. So it became very frustrating, and it took Lisa, my wife, I think it took her about 6, 7, maybe 8 months to persuade me to finally go and see a psychologist to talk through some of the issues that I had. I was always under the belief that I would go back to Baghdad, back on the teams and back working, but it came apparent that that would never happen because of the brain injury I received. It slowed down my cognitive thinking. So if for example, I'd been in a contact and I was firing my weapon and it jammed or I got a stoppage, my brain wouldn't work fast enough to do the drills to clear it and sort it out and get back into the firefight or whatever the situation was. So from there, I went and spoke to a psychologist. So after 7, 8 months, I finally went and spoke with a psychologist, and after various tests and questionnaires and a lot of one-on-one speaking, I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. With that and the acquired brain injury that I have cognitive problems. I suffer with something that's called hypervigilance and catastrophizing, intrusive thoughts, flashbacks. The list goes on. There is different levels of PTSD. Some people turn to drink. Some people don't like to talk about it. I found that talking about it did help with a lot of things. With some things I do keep to myself. So with my PTSD, as I say, I have what's called hypervigilance, and I'm sure you could do a Google search, but it's basically my brain is kind of like in operational mode. So I'm always hyper aware of my surroundings and what's going on, always thinking that the worst is going to happen, and because of that the catastrophizing comes into it as well. Whereas if I was on the park with one of my boys and he fell over, A normal person would a normal person's brain would say, "Oh, he's fell over, he's fine," whereas my brain and the catastrophizing takes it further and further. Oh, he's fallen over, he's gonna bang his head, he's then gonna have a bleed, he's then gonna die. My brain, it just literally runs away with itself, and that's catastrophizing. I'm always thinking the worst is gonna happen. Like if I'm in the car on the motorway and I see someone, cut me up, or I'm seeing him driving like an idiot, or anything like that, my brain always takes it further, and I kind of have to reel myself back in and say, hang on a minute, you're not in a war-torn country anymore, you're actually in a safe environment. The chances of something happening are very slim, but some days it's not as easy as that. The intrusive thoughts, they're mainly about the accident or about Mick and the pain and suffering that he went through. As I say, an intrusive thought, it can be a smell or a sound, or you smell something and instantly I'm back in that accident, and everything seems real and feels real, smells real, sounds real. That's not it's not a very good experience, and along that comes anxiety as well. Anxiety attacks I would not wish on anyone. I can literally be, out for a meal, as I like my food, and I just get an overwhelming sense of something's not right. It just does not seem right in my head, and my brain starts overthinking again, and it takes a lot to bring it back and say to myself, I'm okay, just take a few deep breaths and you're in a safe environment. Sleepless nights can be a killer, especially when I have the two young boys that I need to look after. But all of these, in all honesty, and I'm opening up here, all them I can kind of live with. The hypervigilance of the catastrophizing, the flashbacks, the intrusive thoughts. Them are they're not nice, but I can live with them. And because of the therapy that I've had, I learned to navigate around it. I manage it. I know my triggers. I can sometimes sense that I'm going down the wrong path, and then I'll go and speak to my psychologist, or Lisa, or even close friends can see that I'm going down this path that isn't right for me. I don't do the word depression. I remember my psychologist Sheila, who I've worked closely with now for 10 years, once said to me I was depressed, and no, don't be saying that word to me. I don't do the word depression. I just have a down day, or maybe a few days. It's not easy to live with, but as I say, all them little things like the catastrophizing and the hypervigilance I can live with. The one thing that really cuts me up is the guilt, and the guilt is all to do with Mick. Now, the company carried out an investigation regarding the accident and proved that I'd carried out the drills correctly and that there was no blame on my part. Mick himself has spoken to me many a time on the phone, on Facebook, on Messenger, telling me, the drills I did were correct and were alive because of the drills I carried out. But the guilt of injuring Mick, and I'm not going to go too much into it, but Mick's not had a good time of it of late. His life is getting back on track now, which is fantastic. But for a long time, he was in a bad way. He was struggling with a lot of things, and the guilt I felt for that stays with me every day. There's not a day that goes by where I don't think of Mick. he's alive, he's well, he's adjusted to his life now, and he is enjoying life once again. But it still doesn't dilute the guilt that I have, and I suppose I'll always have that guilt. Mental health and PTSD is it's something that can't be seen, and that's part of the problem. If I was sat here with a cast on my arm or scars, you would think, oh, what happened, or how are you getting on with life? But because it's something in here, people look at you and think you're normal. Now I know my head does look like it's on upside down, but I do look normal-ish, but inside here isn't normal. And I've learned to accept that. I've learned to live with it, and as I say, I've learned to navigate through it. My anxiety is kind of manageable. It only really raises its head because of the Americans. Now, because of when the accident happened, I was looking after Americans. You automatically got American insurance. So they, like any insurance company, they're all about money. And I had to go to New York and do a trial. And I remember as soon as I walked in and I saw the United States seal on the wall of the courtroom, I had an anxiety attack. But I had to take the stand literally as that was happening. It wasn't a nice feeling. I was there basically fighting for the rest of my life, fighting for what was owed to me, so to speak. And with the help of Sheila and my family and close friends, I managed to get through that. I do believe my PTSD will never go away. Some people have their own opinion on that. Some people think you can be cured from it. I actually don't believe you can. But what I do believe is that you can learn to live with it, navigate it, and work around it. And that's what I do. My life, because of the memory problems, my life is alarm timers and post-it notes. As I say, the hypervigilance and the catastrophizing is kind of getting better, but it will always be there. The intrusive thoughts are kind of difficult to manage. I do what's called an appointment method. So I know when I get an email from the Americans, I won't open that unless I'm with Lisa, because if it contains something that I'm not happy with, my brain just 1,000 mile an hour, and it just doesn't help. So I do what's called the appointment method, and it's always worked for me. And that means I won't open that until 4 p.m. And Sheila worked with me with this, and she always stipulated that you must keep that appointment, and that's what I do. If an email comes in at 9 o'clock and it's from the Americans, I won't open that email until 4:30 when I know Lisa's home. But I always keep that appointment. I won't go, oh, it's 7 o'clock. No, I keep that appointment, and it's kind of reprogramming, and it makes things become the norm. Sleepless nights, they can be difficult for me at times. Some nights I just my head hits a pillow and boom, it's morning. That's absolutely fantastic. But most nights I wake up cold sweats, not violently shouting out, but I'm back there in that situation. Some days, nights, I don't even manage to. I struggle to get to sleep, so I use what Sheila called the association method, and that is basically you've got to have a very, very vivid imagination, and she will say you have to imagine yourself somewhere, but you've got to put as much information in as possible, which then switches your brain over from thinking all these things to calmness. So I think of myself on a beach, walking along on the beach. I can feel the sand between my toes, the waves crashing over. I can feel the saltiness in the air. I can feel the breeze. And the more information I put in, the more relaxed my brain becomes. It switches over from that operational mode and it switches to like a calming mode, and I do manage to get to sleep. My life today is difficult. I struggle, as I say, with a lot of things, but I have a good routine. I've got a good backing of people, obviously Lisa and close family and friends who know my story in depth. And, you know, I'm not ashamed of having PTSD. I'm not embarrassed about having PTSD. I don't like having it, but as I say, I'm not ashamed or embarrassed about having it. I recently did a talk in front of 100 people, which was nerve-wracking, but I had to calm myself, and I managed to pull it off. And I ended with something, and I said this, if I can remember it rightly, and it was, PTSD does not define me. It's just a chapter in my life that has shaped me to be the person that I am today. What defines me and what shapes me is being the best person I can be. And that leads me on to the work that I do. I do a lot of metal work and a lot of oil paintings, and the money that I make, a percentage goes to charity. It keeps me busy. It keeps my mind occupied, so I'm not thinking of things that are no good for me. And that's basically it. I've opened up. I've give you a brief insight to my life. And as I say, I do have PTSD. It's something that can't be seen, but it's very real, and it's very real for a lot of other veterans and normal people. People think you have to have been in a combat or contact situation to receive PTSD, and it's simple. It isn't the case. You can get PTSD by seeing your best friend being run over or watching a close family member pass away. PTSD is here. Most people do have some form of PTSD, maybe in a mild form, but they do have it, and a lot of people don't even know they've got it. But what we need to do is raise awareness for it, raise money to help people, and that's why I've opened up this evening and told you my boring story. I was close to tears at one point, but as I say, me and Mick are good. We live to fight another day, and what's going to happen now is I'm going doing a 30-mile tab with my old platoon and the lads that I served in the army with to help raise awareness and help raise money. That's been organised by my old platoon sergeant and my old boss, Chris Hunter, who's an amazing leader of men, along with the platoon sergeant. And I'm hoping, if people have got the time and the people that are local to me, if we could, why not? Let's meet up at the Horseshoe Pub on Sunday at, let's say, 3 o'clock, no matter what the weather, and walk down Falls Road and take a mile walk round Clifton Country Park, and then let's all text a number that I'll put up, and, you know, if a handful of people turn up, then it's £3 per person to text that number and raise money and raise awareness for mental health and PTSD. And, you know, I'm hoping, not that you've enjoyed this video, but that it might have been a bit educational and giving you a little bit of insight. So just along the bottom there's a like button, there's a comment button, and there's a share. Not bothered in the likes, not bothered in the comments. You can give me abuse if you want, but it's this one, this share button. If you share that, then some of your friends will see the video, and if they share it, some of their friends, and then, you know, there might be someone out there that is watching this video that is suffering and doesn't actually want to seek help or speak with someone. You know, it sounds cliche, but the first hurdle to get over is admitting you have that problem. I did it, and thousands of other people can do it. So, and you know what? If you feel like you don't have anyone to speak to, you know what? Send me a message, and send me a private message, and I'll chat with you. And if you're local, do you know what? My door's always open for a brew. Not that I really make brews, you probably have to make it yourself, but my door's always open, and I'm always willing to listen. I'm a good listener, and as you can see, I'm a good chatter, and, you know, we can have a brew. Don't, you know, it does sound cliche, don't suffer in silence, but it is really true. If you can get it off your chest, it is really a weight lifted, and I'm going to leave it at that. So thanks for listening, thanks for your time, and I'll put up the link to pledge a donation, but it'd be great for any local people on Sunday at 3 o'clock at the Horseshoe Pub, and we'll take a walk into Clifton Country Park, a nice little bimbo, you know, and maybe we'll have a chat. Thank you.